Something that you might be asking yourself when you're starting out in the film world, or if you're going to buy a new camera, is do you need to buy an expensive lens too? A lot of people will say that you do, and that in fact the lens is actually more important than the camera itself, which is valid to an extent, but how much exactly do you have to spend? For example, my first lens, the Sigma to 18-35, which I'm filming on now and is popular with the camera that I'm using, costs around $800, and that's actually relatively cheap in the camera world, considering the fact that they shoot movies on lenses that cost more than cars. But can you buy something a little bit cheaper, say like $40? Well, today I'm going to show you what some footage might look like on a $40 lens, and that is this plasticky Canon 18-55mm 3.5 to 5.6 IS2. This is one of those old kit lenses you'll find on your Canon Rebel T3i or T4i, and it goes for about $200 on the internet new, but you can find it used in like new condition for under $40 on very reputable websites like Adorama, MPB, eBay, and I'll link those below so you can see that for yourself. And so that's the question we're going to explore in this video, is do you have to buy something in new condition and that is so highly esteemed, or can you get something maybe that's a little less respected in the film world's eye and get solid footage on it? Well, I not only got this lens used, I got it for free. I found it lying around without lens caps on in my girlfriend's basement, even with some scratches on it. But I saw it had an EFS mount on it, so I put it right on my Blackmagic, and this is what I got. Okay, so that last shot wasn't the best, but other than that, I don't know about you guys. Obviously, image is a subjective taste sort of thing, but I'm pretty proud of some of the footage I got, considering I only used available light. I was always on the move, and I was just kind of messing around with the thing. And dare I say, I think you can use this for a feature film. Now, it would have to be a really stylized, saturated indie feature like from the 90s, but you know, I think you can make something compelling with this within certain limitations. And I even went so far as to compare it side by side with the Sigma 18-35 at the same aperture. Now, one caveat to this experiment is that the Sigma can obviously open up to 1.8 aperture, whereas this Canon can only go to 3.5. But aside from that, I wanted to see what they look like side by side at the same aperture at around 3.5 or 4. And while the Sigma did look sharper and slightly more natural, I was surprised at how subtle the difference was. So that leads us to the question of, should you actually rely on a lens like this Canon, and in what situations? So let's go over some of the pros and cons of this lens. First pro about this lens is if you're buying it used, it's dirt cheap relative to your situation, but in the camera world it is. And if you have $40 lying around to spend on camera gear, you have nothing to lose buying this and trying it out and seeing what you can get with it and what sort of situations it might help you in. So what sort of situations might it help you in? Well, if you want an extremely lightweight setup, this is very light plastic, and the cheap make actually works to its benefit, especially if you want to do something like vlogging. You can't really walk around with a long and heavy 18-35 Sigma. So this was actually really helpful for vlogging, and I walked around with it. And another thing, for as cheap as it is, I was really impressed with the built-in image stabilization. And another thing to mention, another pro, is considering the price of this, I'm actually really impressed with how fast its aperture is at 3.5, considering something much more popular and expensive like this Canon 24-105 only gets you about 4 or even 4.5 aperture. Now, that said, let's move to some of the cons, because there's a con related to the aperture, which is that on this EFS 18-55mm, the aperture is not fixed. So that means when you zoom in to the full 55 millimeters, your aperture drops to 5.6, which is really dark and in some indoor situations pretty unusable. Another con of this lens is, like I was saying, in certain situations it kind of has this stylized, very saturated look, kind of crushes some of the colors you might want to really bring out on a camera like a Blackmagic. But other than that, like, if you can get this lens for 40 bucks or find it in your girlfriend's basement like I did, I really think you have nothing to lose. So again, I'll put those links in the description. And I'll also say that buying gear can be really stressful and expensive. And even when you have really expensive high-end gear, you sometimes wait to use it on the right project. You don't want to waste it. There's some sort of like precious feeling with it. At least I get that. But with this lens that I literally found for nothing and feel comfortable like throwing around, it really actually inspired me to go out and just shoot whatever. It made my setup a lot lighter. It made my bag a lot lighter. And I kind of felt like a kid again, like a teenager when I had a Canon Rebel T3i. And I think that's the feeling we should always be going for in film, is to not put judgment or restraints on our work. Act as if, we have nothing to lose and everything to gain by the art that we're making. And so in that sense, I think this is a really nice lens to have lying around for the right day or the right situation. Let me know what you think, if you disagree, if you agree, if you think you need a $50,000 lens, I don't know. Open to your opinions in the comments below. Have a good one.